Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, this is Dave. We're taking that. As you know, I'm the state representative from Trumbull, but I also have kids in the Trumbull school system. My wife also works in the Trumbull school system. We reviewed the plan on Friday. I thought the Board of Education did a really commendable job. It was well thought out, and I read well. But we did receive a bunch of questions. We do have some concerns out there. Our job as legislators is to, if we may not know the answer to something, we could gather the information and go back to the state and see if there's a way that it can be addressed. So thank you, everybody, for their interest. I see lots of familiar names on there, including a couple of Board of Ed members.
Hey, Money called me before, but I'm on a meeting for lunch. Can I call back later?
Sure.
Okay,
You can
thanks.
do, that would be good. Hi, Kat. So I do see a lot of familiar names and some Board of Ed members too, which I think is great. So welcome, everybody. Hopefully we can get some good information.
Yep, thanks, Dave. And Ben McGordy is here as well. Ben?
I'm here. Good morning, everybody. Just want to say thank you for coming online today and listening to the session, and I'd like to thank Fran for taking her time out to help us out today, and our host for hosting this day. So let's see what we got today.
Great. So for those of you who aren't aware, Fran is from Trumbull, so knows the community very well. She was also a superintendent in Bridgeport. And I've had the opportunity to speak with her, listen to her, and I think that she's got a lot to offer today. So Fran, I'm going to turn this to you to please share with the audience your thoughts about what's happening now regarding school reopening this fall.
Okay, thank you. I was muted by the host, it said. So I'm here and I want to be able to work every moment that I have with you. It's really a privilege to have been asked to come and speak with you around the reopening of school. I try my best to be available to groups whenever possible, because I think it is incredibly important to communicate what the vision is and where we hope districts can go during this incredibly challenging time. As an educator, I can tell you that the summer is spent planning for reopening of school, whether you're a teacher, a principal, or a superintendent. And we like our ducks to be in a row, and we like to know exactly when school is opening and how it's opening and professional development, etc. So this particular period of time has been a challenge for all of us. And I also know from personal experience with my own family and working children that have their children at home, that it is an incredibly challenging time for families as well. So the communication is paramount at this time. And even when we think we're communicating well, there are holes in communication. We always need to do as much communicating as we possibly can. So thank you, honestly, from the bottom of my heart for this opportunity. So yes, every district submitted a plan last Friday. They were due on the 24th. The week before that, they submitted a plan, actually an estimate of their expenses for what they assumed would be expenses in reopening school. The idea was, as much as we possibly could, we wanted to bring back all of the students in a relatively safe and healthy environment to the extent possible. We know from the research that's been done, and we also know anecdotally, as I'm sure all of you have heard, the most effective teaching and learning certainly takes place when the teacher is present to the students. We closed in March. As of March 16th, all schools were closed in Connecticut, and we embarked on distance learning. And while I believe educators did a yeoman's job of adapting to that almost immediately, I don't know. And I'm hearing from others that it wasn't an incredibly effective way of teaching and learning, especially for our youngest students and our students with disabilities. So the State Department of Education issued a plan for guidance, and that plan talked to districts about what they needed to do moving forward. And they were asked to prepare plans for 3 different scenarios: to bring back all the children in a healthy and safe environment using the mitigating strategies, or a hybrid model, as well as a distance learning model. So let me start with first, what most districts are doing.
Dancing, apparently.
Okay. Number 1, if we brought back the students in full, that meant you were bringing back all of the students, that you were following the CDC guidelines to the best of your ability, and that included sanitizing, hand washing, face coverings, and social distancing. We were first told 6 feet apart. Then we were told if they wore a mask, 3 to 6 feet would suffice. We were told also that we needed to cohort the students. In other words, keep the same students together over time so that contact tracing would be more easily done. So that was the first model, and what the commissioner and the governor really pushed hard on was to bring back the youngest children, because they seem to be the ones most adversely affected by distance learning. And I'm broad brushing that. There may be some that did very well with it, but for the most part, they had a very difficult time with distance learning. And, you know, families were at home trying to work with the children at the same time. We also know the economy is also another factor, and parents needed to get back to work. So we looked at that model, number 1. Many districts said, I can do kindergarten through 8th grade, and I believe I can bring them back in a relatively safe manner and into a healthy environment. But my high school is a different story. I'm having great difficulty social distancing the kids, and I cannot cohort. And we all know that. The cohorting at the high school is incredibly difficult. Maybe you can do it in 9th grade, but when you move beyond 9th, you have 9th graders actually taking 11th grade courses, and 11th grade kids taking some of the 9th grade courses. So there's a lot of movement back and forth, and superintendents were very open about that. And so I want you to keep that in mind when we talk the different models. The hybrid model was bringing back some of the children some of the time, and other children would be at home. The most popular hybrid model is to bring in Group A on Monday and Tuesday, close down for intense cleaning on Wednesday, and children have independent projects to work on. Teachers are planning and have individual conferences with kids, and then on Thursday and Friday bring in Group B. It's not perfect. None of these models are perfect. Some districts are doing split sessions, but that is an incredibly expensive model because of transportation. Some districts are doing 1 week in, 1 week out for hybrid. And the third choice was distance learning. What if the data ticks up and we all have to go to distance learning as we did in March? And while I said teachers did a yeoman's job, we've learned a great deal since then. We've learned best practices in distance learning, and we have worked with Columbia University to produce a framework for distance learning with suggested timelines, etc. What we have learned, and there was a survey done of 18,000 students answered this survey. What we have learned is students want to see their teachers. So synchronous learning on a daily basis is important. Synchronous, as you know, just means the teacher needs to be present to the students. And there is a degree of asynchronous learning that goes along with that. So those are the three models. Last night at the press conference at 4 o'clock, the governor gave flexibility to districts to choose their own model. What he said was he hoped that the majority of districts would bring back as many children as possible. And I don't use the word safe because I was taught by an epidemiologist that you cannot guarantee safe. You can guarantee relative safety and healthy to the extent possible. And let me just deviate a bit and tell you that the hardest conversation I had as a superintendent was when I was superintendent in Hamden and 9/11 happened. And I had a meeting with all of the parents that weekend. And I had to say to them, I will do everything possible to keep your children as safe as I possibly can, but I cannot guarantee 100% safety. And the same thing is true here. No one of you can guarantee 100% safety for every child and every teacher. And I think we have to regrettably live with that premise. What has been incredibly challenging about this is the ambiguity that we face. And that's the truth, guys. It changes, the data changes, the approach changes based upon the data, based upon what we're hearing from CDC or our own Department of Health. And that's been a challenge for all of us. And I welcome your questions on all of that. I don't know Trumbull's plan in detail. I do know that most are planning to try to bring back all of the kids, but I do know also there's been some changes overnight where more districts are thinking about a hybrid model. So again, it's not a statewide model. The governor felt strongly and the commissioner felt strongly that the context of the districts needed to be taken into consideration when the districts were deciding what reopening model they would use. I want to say one more thing, and that is that before I open it, and give me any comments or questions, and I'll try to explain anything I can to the best of my ability. But the one thing I want to say to you is the social and emotional learning and the social and emotional development of our students, please do not think that's a soft skill. That is the foundation for all of the academics that will take place. And we are going to ensure that we are aware of the social emotional needs of our staff, of our families, and of our students as they come back. There is some training planned. There'll be more details on that toward the end of the week, but it will be excellent, excellent training, free to all educators, both certified and non-certified, on strategies for social emotional learning. And it will be coming out of Yale. But I can't say more than that right now. The announcement will be made on Friday. So that is the overall piece. We're advocating for more funding. The CARES money went out. I'm sure it was based on Title I allocation, so I'm not sure that Trumbull received a whole lot of money, but there is additional monies at the state level, I believe somewhere around 100 million that will also be coming out. And it will be covering COVID-19 expenses, such as PPE equipment, bus monitors, etc. So that's my piece of explaining. I don't like to talk a lot. I prefer to hear the questions so that I make sure that I am tailoring the presentation. All of your time is incredibly important. I want to make sure I'm tailoring the presentation to meet your needs. So I'm ready for any questions or comments.
Thank you, Fran. And we do have a few. For anyone who is on the Zoom, if you do have a question, submit it through the chat. And we will do our best to get to every single one of them today. So let me just throw a couple at you, and I'll open it up as well for Rep. Bertigliano and McGorty if they have any, and we'll keep addressing those from the crowd. One that sort of hits on two things that you spoke to. First, I think it's laudable that the governor did make that decision to support local decision making, which is so important when it comes to our schools and our school districts. But you spoke to the districts being able to make their own decision, and also this issue of ambiguity. So how does a district make the call in terms of when they move from one sort of plan to the other based on, case numbers, the data related to COVID?
So that's a great question, Laura. And I would say that right now, the district's plan for their opening model, based upon the data that they have today and the conditions within their schools. Can they socially distance? Do they have all the mitigating strategies in place? If they, and they are, I believe doers should be the deciders. So they're doing the work. If they understand that they have everything in place and the best model for them is to bring all the students back and they feel that they can do that, that is what they need to do. What I keep saying and emphasizing over and over and over again is this is a public health issue. This is not an education issue. I know education programming and I can talk to education. I cannot talk to all of the issues with the public health. And so we are working with the Department of Public Health. I'm on a committee with them for them to establish the guardrails, so to speak. What is it that would make a district, let's say a Trumbull that is bringing in all of the children right now, what are the data indicators that would have them move to hybrid or to online? And the Department of Health is attempting to come up with that. I was on with them until 7 p.m. last night. I learned all about sludge, by the way, and how they're using sludge to determine the how permeating COVID-19 is in a region or in a particular locality. I did not know about that. And so I'm very thankful to be working with them. But honestly, the guardrails have to come from the Department of Health. And hopefully they will be very specific and will help districts move from one to the other.
Thank you. And we've got several questions, and of course, you know, students are one of our top concerns, their health, their
Yes.
safety, and as you talked about, the importance of going back for social emotional reasons, all of this for parents to be able to get back to their jobs. But what about the educators? So, you know, I have heard from a couple of teachers in particular who were concerned about precautions for them going back. Even things like the first day of school, right? Making sure that their classrooms were set up in a way that would be safe, that they wouldn't be expected to do that. What about the educator side for our teachers?
Well, let's face it, as a former superintendent, without my teachers, I couldn't do anything, right? So teachers are incredibly important. And I spend about 2 to 3 hours a week with the teacher unions, CEA, AFT, and the leaders of those unions. I also spend time in different sessions with teachers. And so I get it. And what I think we need to be very public about is that we are deeply and strongly considering the safety and the health of our teachers. Without them, we're nothing. And so that needs to come across. And yes, the sanitizing, they need to not be worrying about that. They need to not be worrying about the PPE equipment, including masks. Those should and will be provided to them. And if there is a teacher with immune deficiency or a senior teacher who feels at risk, there are avenues for that teacher to take. And we absolutely respect that. And all we are asking is that they come forward and let us know that so we can plan in advance. I would also say to you that we are concerned, frankly, that there will be a number of teachers that are unable to return. I'm hearing about 20% statewide. And that will result in some shortages for us in the teaching ranks. And so we're looking for some flexibility in certification. I don't know if we'll be able to achieve that, but we are looking for it so that if you had a 7th grade social studies teacher, they might be able to fill in a 5th grade classroom. But we're far from there yet. We're hoping that the governor will do an executive order on that and that the legislature will move forward. But I will tell you that we are very empathetic to the teachers' needs and assure them, and we can't say it enough, and I tell districts to say it all the time, that their health needs are incredibly important.
Excuse me, Fran, are any of the plans, I read through the Trumbull plan, and one of the questions that kept coming up was there even the scenario for a teacher that either is uncomfortable or immunocompromised, that didn't feel safe going back into the school, that they were able to broadcast, sort of teach into the classroom? I don't even know if we have that technology or if that's something that was considered. So maybe they're home sort of on Zoom, zooming into their own classroom type of situation.
Well, that's a great question, David, and it depends upon the school district. If in fact they bring in a medical note and they are they want to be medically excused, so to speak, from teaching. That's one story where there are some COVID-19 days they take and then they can take medical leave. In some districts, and I'm not familiar in detail with Trumbull, but in some districts, they are working with the teachers on an individual basis to have them staff some of the remote learning that is going on while the kids are in school. It it really depends on an individual and on an individual basis. But in some districts that is being done. They're also free to take FMLA if they choose to do that. But I don't want to blanket that. That really is an individual case that's going on within every school district through the Human Resources Office.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a consideration. I mean, take everything aside, they are still our employee technically of the town, and they deserve to be protected and not put in a precarious situation or in a dangerous situation. But yet they still have value, obviously. So maybe we could use technology to still extract value, but yet keep them safe and comfortable. So
I think
go ahead.
David, I think there are real possibilities there, and I certainly have seen some examples of that, and certainly in distance learning, we're also talking about, we have about 20%. I don't know the exact numbers in Trumbull, according to your survey, and that can change next week anyway, but we have, generally speaking, 20 to 30% of the parents are saying they're keeping their children home. And so in most districts, they're going to stream lessons from the classrooms for the kids that are in school while the teacher's teaching. There are webcams set up and those lessons are being streamed to the children at home. I could also see where teachers that are not in school could be following up with those children at home to ensure that they are getting the instruction that they need.
So, I mean, I know I have a list of questions that people emailed me, but I think there's a lot in the chat function that maybe Laura has. So I know people got on so their questions could be answered, not particularly ours. So
yes,
we
great.
can start
So
going
thanks,
through some
Dave.
of those.
So Fran, related to what you were just talking about, one of the questions that has come in is about streaming. So how will children, families, teachers be legally protected if this occurs? That, there's some concern about cameras being allowed in a classroom. Are there legal ramifications?
I don't believe that. I think that your local legal advisors could speak about that, but I'm not sure what the legal ramifications would be, other than that, the webcams are set up, the lessons are streamed, the teachers have the ability to turn off those webcams or iPads when they are not instructing. But I don't. Let me be totally honest with you. I'm not a strong believer in the streaming, especially for younger children, but I frankly don't know another way right now, because if teachers are teaching in the classroom, they can't be doing double that work and teaching the kids at home as well. So it's not perfect, and none of these plans are perfect, but I do think the streaming would probably work the best of any other solution that we have.
Okay, thanks for addressing that. What advice do you have for parents who have special needs children with current IEPs that are no longer appropriate for the first day of school?
Well, I do believe that we need to be holding PPTs, that we have not received a waiver for that. And if they do believe that their IEP is not appropriate, they should be requesting a PPT to change that IEP. The other piece that I really do believe, and please, this is not a statewide mandate or anything like that, but I do believe, from anecdotal information and from some short-term research that was done, that our students with disabilities, especially those very involved, have been adversely affected by the distance learning. And I think we have to make every attempt in our realm of possibility to try to get those students in K-12 to be in-person learning. And we need to supply the teachers with whatever PPE equipment they need to be able to be in contact with those children. I do think that that is incredibly important.
Thank you for that. Can you clarify, is social distancing 3 or 6 feet apart, or does it depend?
It depends on who you talk to tell you the truth. But, you know, frankly, the one that I have read is 6 feet apart if there are no masks, 3 feet if you're having masks. And what we have said to districts is you must maintain at least 3 feet. 6 feet is optimal. And every child needs to be in a mask. And let me just tell you something we learned about masks this summer. You know, everyone I talked to in May was saying, these kids can't wear masks. They're not going to wear them. It's going to be a real issue. So we had a small summer school I don't know if Trumbull had it, but several districts had small summer schools. And, you know, the first priority was students with disabilities, and superintendents came back and said, wow, it's unbelievable, but these kids did incredibly well with masks. They seem to understand. Kids are resilient, you know, they're not like me. I go to the grocery store, I wear the mask, and I rip it off when I come out because it bothers me. But these kids seem to be able to tolerate masks much better than we expected. That's a good point.
Yeah, absolutely. So another question, our economy is a huge factor. How can a hybrid model work for families with 2 working parents? How can they go back to work and then still have children at home that are trying to be educated?
And that is one of the reasons why we have been encouraging, whenever districts can do it, if they could bring back all of the students in a relatively safe and healthy environment, K-8. We get it. You know, we're not a daycare. We are a school, but we do get it that that parents need to return to work. There's no question about that. That's why you've heard the commissioner and the governor talking about bringing all of the kids back. And, you know, but health and safety has to be paramount in that. And if we can't guarantee that we can social distance 3 to 6 feet, that we have face coverings, that we have sanitizing, that we have all of those things, then we can't do it. But frankly, you know, the more that we can help with doing that, the better it will be. I don't know about Trumbull High School, but I would hope to the extent possible we can also bring back as many high school kids as we can. I'm less concerned about the parents at that level because hopefully we're growing independent, mature kids that can be left while the parents are working.
Great. A couple of questions that are somewhat related here, and it has to do with when we make a decision about switching models, right? So one of them is, you know, once a model is chosen, how long do we have to revisit it? Is it 90 days? But another perspective to that question is, you know, how does the school have the plan in place so that when positive cases in the school hit a certain number, then you go virtual? Like, is it 1 case, 10 cases, 20 cases? We sort of talked about this a little bit at the beginning. It gets to your ambiguity point, right? But
yes,
how's that decision made?
Yes. So it's a great question. And I would say to you that um, the decision is made hopefully in early August. Um, your school district will make a decision on how the children are coming back at the end of August or beginning of September.
Is that a mandated date, or is that up to our local Board of Education?
It's up to your local Board of Education, but we've begged the governor to say that that is really important, to have the resources out there, everything in place so that districts can make that decision early August. We get it. Families need to know, teachers need to know, how are we coming back? Let's say in Trumbull, you make the decision to bring all the children back KA and you're going to a hybrid model 9-12 because of various reasons. And you would come back in that way. I am hoping that the Department of Public Health will then have guardrails that will tell us how we transition to a different model, virtual learning, for example, if that becomes necessary. I don't have the expertise in that to know when we need to move from one to another. That really is a health issue. And I know they're working very hard on it. You know, there are top epidemiologists on this committee, and they're the ones that we look to for making, for giving us those guardrails on when we move from one to another. Now, if you were to open all of your schools, let's say K-8, and bring all the children back, and the 20% of families decided not to come back, but then like Europe, many of those families over the first couple of weeks needed to become comfortable, and then they did come back in or wanted to come back in. I think it's fair to the school district to ask for at least a week before those families come back in, because the school district has to figure out that social distancing and cohorting will not be upset by that. So we're asking that families give at least a week. You know, if they decide on Monday they want the kids back in school, they need to wait until the following Monday to give us time to prepare.
That's great. Okay. So this was a question specific to Trumbull, but is the governor also, is there a mandate on school start date? Is that up to each district?
Up to each district.
And just a quick circle back on the discussion regarding the IEPs. So it's not too late then in order to request, to put in an emergency request?
I don't think so. No, I mean, you know, none of the tenets of IDEA have been waived. And if a parent wants a PPT because they don't feel that the IEP meets their child's need to go back in the fall, they can request that.
Great. I know that is something really important. So thank you for that clarification.
Let me just say that it could be difficult to get that scheduled because you've got to work around vacations and everything else because schools aren't in session. But I would say to you, there's nothing to prevent them asking for it.
Great. Thank you for that.
Are you going through the chat room, Laura? Do you still have lots in the chat room questions?
Yes, these are all questions from the chat room, Dave.
Because I received a whole bunch of sort of like nuts and bolts questions, so I didn't know if that was maybe more appropriate for the Trumbull Board of Ed than for Fran. You know, what do you do about recess? How do you handle lunch? Things like that.
Sure, let me throw one more out and I'll turn it to you for some of the other questions that you have. You spoke, Fran, regarding masks for children and that they were pretty resilient. What about for teachers wearing those masks, you know, full day? You know, has anyone tested the options for an entire day before actually mandating that?
Well, what they're saying is certainly there are mask breaks for kids and for teachers. You know, teachers can go outside and with their students for a break. They're also saying that if the teacher is 6 feet apart and doing instruction, that she is free to take that mask off when they're instructing and they're 6 feet away from the children. So yes, they are going to need breaks. I don't think it's reality for kids or adults to have a mask on 8 hours without that break.
Yeah, thank you. Dave, what do you got?
Well, I don't know if it's for Fran, but a lot of the questions I got were like, will there be recess in the lower grades? I mean, is that something that the state recommends, or is that part of this guideline?
Well, I think that it will depend upon a district, but I would hope there would be recess. I think that we're going to need it now more than ever, and kids need to be outside. And if they have that cohort in the classroom, they can work through that on the playground. So in other words, one cohort goes out at a time on the playground and but you also have to remember that then the playground has to be sanitized afterwards, or the playground equipment isn't used. And, you know, if they use a ball or whatever, that needs to be sanitized. But I would highly recommend, and I know that the state would as well, that we do need breaks for our children and our teachers.
All right, I just got her. Marie, I got it. All right, bye.
Okay, Lucinda. One of the other questions was, and this may be for the Trumbull Board of Ed and not you, but I'll throw it out there, was if the kids are going to be required to eat in their classrooms as opposed to the cafeteria, how do they protect the allergic kids in the classroom? You know, sort of that the protocol for food allergies, is that contemplated in the reopening, or is that a state guideline?
No, that is a individual district choice on how they do that safely. I know many districts are doing, you know, delivering the lunches to the classroom. Others are making use of the cafeteria and just have it mapped out for cohorts within the cafeteria. All of them are doing it in very individualized ways.
All right, Laura, I did too. You can go back to the chat now.
Okay.
Can I get in there for a second?
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
All right. I had a teacher had some concerns. One is when the children come back to school, they come in, they have their masks on, they sanitize, but some kind of like a take their temperature type of protocol she'd like to see. And then also maybe like a questionnaire when the child comes back. Have you traveled, you know, over the weekend, the last, you know, were you with somebody that was positive, and that type of concern she had.
I am sure that any district could institute that if they felt that that was very helpful. We have moved in a different direction on temperature taking. I was on the committee that was putting summer school together, and every child at that time in late May, when we were putting that guidance together, needed a temperature check prior to coming into school. DPH has changed some of that now, and absolutely does not believe anymore that the temperature check is incredibly valid. For example, they feel like if a child is running around outside, you can add a degree to that temperature very easily. Children can also be carrying COVID-19 and not have a temperature. So it's not always 100% fail-proof. So many districts have just removed that completely.
And then the other thing she asked too was, if one child comes to class and they are positive, then there's the self-quarantine for 14 days. And how far does that go with the teachers, the family members, and the other students?
Well, I believe that if a child is found to be positive, that that entire classroom is quarantined. I don't know exactly the amount of time. I do not believe it's 14 days. It's shorter than that. But there is a period of quarantine after that happens. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's what I have for now. Thank you.
Great, thanks for that. So Fran, should districts choose a hybrid model? How will teachers, teachers are trained and very familiar with teaching in the classroom. What kind of training will be offered to teachers for this hybrid model?
Well, let's talk about online learning, because I think it's incredibly important, even in a hybrid model, and it's important in a distance learning model, which we may be all forced into again. I do think I have some strong feelings here, so please pardon me on that, but I think teachers did a phenomenal job of adapting to distance learning in March. I think that we've come a long way, and we work with Columbia University. I think I mentioned that early on a framework, on a suggested schedule for distance learning and strategies. But one of the things we know that is incredibly important is that there be synchronous learning. What that means is that the teacher must be present to the children, and they must be present on a consistent basis. Does that mean 7 hours a day? No. There is some asynchronous where children are working on their work and sending things in, etc. But there needs to be in-person learning, and 18,000 kids in surveys told us how important that was. They treasure their relationship with teachers, and teachers treasure that as well. But we had a lot of variation across the state, and we're hoping that when and if we have to go to distance learning this time through, that there'll be less variation and more in-person or synchronous learning. And, the standards are the same. The State Department has established a learning hub with lots of resources that, together with the Columbia framework, should help a great deal in, help our teachers a great deal in organizing for distance learning.
Thank you. And I know there are a tremendous amount of resources available, which is great.
Yes, Laura, but one of the things that was a problem for our teachers was there were piles of resources, but they weren't organized, and trying to sift through all of those resources was really difficult. They told us that. And so I believe that now the resources are much better organized. So I just want to make sure you hear that.
That's awesome, because it's one thing to just have a bunch of stuff out there,
Yeah.
it's another just to be able to get it and use it in a sound kind of way.
In a real coherent way. So hopefully we've made it easier for them.
So we had another question. Why hasn't, let's see, sorry about that. It has to do with, if you could speak a bit more about why the state has offered families the choice that even if schools are open, that they can keep their kids at home.
I think that the state, the governor, the State Department of Education, and it's not just Connecticut, it is most states, recognize the rights of families to choose to keep their children home because they're not comfortable with the that it will be a healthy and safe environment. And I get that. I understand, and I think we have to take all families where they are. The same thing happened in Europe. And after a time, the families began to understand that it really was safe and secure. I mean, they're sending us their most precious asset, their most precious treasure. I mean, I get it. They are concerned, and I think we have to honor that. And we have to provide communication which tells them we're doing all that we can to make it as safe as it possibly can be. And that's the best that we can do, but I also think we have to honor their fears.
Yeah, well said. Thank you for that very much. So the students that have medical exemptions from masks, will they just be interacting in the classroom like the children who do have masks? Will they be separated in any way?
Well, we don't have all the answers on that yet, Laura, because we don't know who they are and how many there are. But I would say to you that no, if they're not wearing masks, they have to be at least 6 feet apart. And there has to be a real medical reason that is accompanied by a doctor's note saying why. I don't think we will seclude them in any way, but I think that we'll have to put different boundaries around them. If they're not wearing masks, I would assume they would need to be 6 feet from any other child or teacher.
Sure, thank you. You spoke, Fran, early on regarding the CARES Act reimbursements. Clearly, our school districts are going to be and have incurring a lot of costs through PPE, through the appropriate, physical setups within the schools, the extra cleanings, just all sorts of different aspects. Is there any expectation for districts in terms of reimbursement?
Well, the CARES Act money is out there already. And it is based on Title I allocation. So it depends upon the level of poverty in a school district, how much money would be allocated to that school district. On top of that, the Secretary of Education put in a caveat that said, if in fact you are going to use this for COVID-19 across the board, then you also must include every child, not just the Title I children in private schools, but every child enrolled in a private school must receive an allocation, which certainly cut down a great deal of the dollars to public schools, just being honest there. That CARES money was about $111 million. That has been sent out to all of the districts. They've withheld, the state withheld the money for the private schools in the allocation. In addition to that, my understanding is there's a COVID relief fund at the state level, which will be another $100 million that will be going out to districts. I think the estimates on the surveys on the cost statewide for districts right now, what they estimated was well over $400 million. So there's another 99 million or 100 million going out. Plus there is money, proposed dollars at the federal level. I don't know how soon we may see those in the HEROES Act, et cetera, coming forward. But for right now, the CARES money is out there. The governor has said there will be additional dollars, and that should be known very shortly.
Yeah,
I believe the governor is going to speak more in detail about those resources this afternoon at 4 in Waterbury.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And if you could please just clarify, and I do want to just say one thing to our audience. We've got just under 5 or so minutes. If you do have any other questions, please feel free to send them into the chat. But Fran, can you clarify when the district comes up with their plan, right? So when Trumbull decides on whichever of the 3 models,
Yep.
There's still flexibility within the district to choose that, K to 8 might be in one model, or the elementary versus middle versus high school. So it's not necessarily that it's one of the 3 across the district.
That's
Can you speak to-
absolutely true, Laura. You can, the district can decide that in the early grades, they want to bring all the children in and they want to go hybrid at the upper grades and into the high school. What I would hope is, and again, it's local control, but I would hope that we wouldn't begin with distance learning. Our numbers don't warrant that. And I would hope that we would try to bring as many children in as possible.
Great, thank you. All right, Dave, Ben, anything else on your
The
end?
only other thing that I had before we have a closing argument is I think most of the Board of Education is on the Zoom call. I didn't know if they individually, if they weren't able to go through the chat, had a question or wanted to have some input or have asked Fran a question directly. I've seen Lucinda, Mike Ward, Jackie Norcell. I've seen a lot of the Board of Ed members on here, which I think is awesome. And I didn't know if they wanted to raise their hand or do whatever to get a question in. Give them that.
The chat's certainly open, so if there's questions, please send them.
Other than that, I did read the Trumbull Board of Ed's plan in its entirety. It was a very thorough job. I thought they did a good job under the circumstances. I think there may or may not be some input on some of the sanitation ideas that they had. We've learned a lot on how to sanitize over time, where, I don't know if we need to close for a whole day to sanitize. They have these ionizers that you could walk through the buildings with. And it started off as this really expensive one that the hospitals use. They're down to sort of a handheld gun, like a mister that has stuff that's not even super toxic, and people can go in the building in the next 10 minutes or so. So I know we've learned a lot that way. So if they ever want to have a conversation about that, I'd be happy to. I'm sure there's other companies that have those services. But other than that, I thought the plan was thorough, well thought out, and look forward to see what they come up with.
I would expect nothing less from Trumbull.
Right, that's what we do.
Nothing less. That's what you do and do well.
All right, a couple quick questions, if you don't mind hanging on, but we did just get a couple more in. I'd love to take advantage
of course, Laura, of course.
of your time here. Regarding buses. So how many kids per seat per bus? Is it more than one per? And if you could please explain, and I don't know that you can address this side. I think it might be helpful if we do maybe a forum with the district, but is the district planning to add more buses? I think that's a local question, Fran. I don't know that.
Yeah, I think that would be a local question.
So.
I think that would be a local question. I do know that in the overall guidance in the state plan, it does say running the buses to near capacity. I'm not sure exactly what that means in the, and I certainly have concerns with 3 children in a seat. So I'm hoping it is fewer than that. And I'm hoping that the kids are, there's a bus monitor that ensures that the children have masks on. As of yesterday, the statewide data said that 54% of the parents were planning to drive their kids in. And I would say to you, if that is a possibility, I think that's a great way to go. At least at the opening of school until we are, well, let me just say, I just feel the fewer kids we have on the bus and the more parents that can drive, the better it is for us.
Right. Well, thank you. We're gonna wrap things up on that note. I guess, Fran, I just wanna thank you, and we've gotten several comments from our audience members that are so grateful for the information that you have shared. You're always very frank. It's not sugar-coated.
I'm frank. Yes, I do not sugarcoat. I've been told you're pretty frank, Fran, but that's okay. Do you know what I mean?
That's what we need, especially in these times. There's a lot of uncertainty. This is so important about our school reopening. So thank you. And Dave, Ben, anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, Fran, thank you so much. This was
You're
very
welcome.
informative. And it was good to see that we had 80 participants on this, so that's really good. When
That's
everybody
wonderful.
watched the Senate today, they're watching us.
That's
So thank you
wonderful.
again.
Thanks,
And-
Fran.
Oh,
If people still have questions, though, they can email us directly, and we'll try to get them answered through you.
Absolutely. And
Yep.
this forum has been recorded. We will certainly post it on our social media, send it out in our newsletters, but certainly make it available. And, you know, we welcome your feedback. If more of this kind of information sharing is useful, we're happy to do it. So thank you, Fran.
you are very welcome. And if there's a need for me to return at any time or get you other resources, please don't hesitate to contact me.
Excellent.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Thank you all for taking the time.